Good afternoon, everyone. This is Paul. Hope things are good this week. Hope you're coping with remote working. And I thought actually that would be quite a good topic for this week. I thought what I would maybe do is cover the architecture side of that, give you a bit of insight into some of the systems that we tend to get involved with, especially as my background was predominantly technology architecture initially. So what you basically faced with when you're doing remote working. So first of all, I thought we'd cover really what businesses are obviously faced with in the last few weeks. So what do businesses actually need? Well, they obviously need everyone to have a home internet connection, goes without saying. But they obviously have to be exposed to the internet as well in some respects. They have to have some way for the user to connect to their applications and the data of the business. So what does that look like? Well, maybe some form of corporate desktop simulator. Could be cloud, could be remote, could be a laptop, could be so on. So we can kind of cover them in a wee minute. And also some connectivity exposed to the internet, wherever the data and applications lie for that business. So if it's in a data center, you need some third-party access. It could be that you have a small enough business that you actually have a lot of your servers on site. So it could be a gateway that you need to stand up, or something that you already have for a smaller amount of remote access. Because obviously with coronavirus and everything else that's going on just now, there is a lot more people working from home than would normally be, I would reckon. So, and it'll be interesting to see how that changes in the coming months. Will people go back to working in the office? Do people like working from home? How much productivity do they get? And so on. And I think we'll maybe cover that in a future video. So one of the things that's just really left on that is user and resource security. So users, obviously just the people who are going to connect to the applications and the data. And the resources are those applications and the data that they need access to. Sometimes that's local shares, sometimes that's cloud shares, sometimes it's things that are on their PC, which they shouldn't be. So it really depends on what your infrastructure is set up as at the present. Okay, so what's a good way to enable home working for your business? Well, most businesses over the years looked at things like Citrix Gateways. You install a small client on your PC at home, and you could connect to the network that you were running those Citrix Gateways. What's a Citrix Gateway? Well, it's really an entrance point to your corporate network, where you would get identified who you are, maybe with some two-factor authentication, like a token or a soft token or a hard token. See that in a lot of corporate environments, RSAID tokens and so on. But also see more and more over the last few years some soft token implementations. So that's a kind of normal way to do it, where you maybe have a remote desktop that you don't actually need to bother about what the client is. It can be done anywhere. But quite often that's when you deploy lots of Citrix locally within your business. So using older hardware, you maybe want to get longevity out of the device. So businesses look at kind of like a 3 to 5 to maybe 7 year use out of their PCs within the sort of write down of a capex model. So that older style, and when I say older, I mean the sweating of the asset. The older style hardware would maybe be more suitable for that. And sometimes you go in nice modern environments and they've just got thin clients, so that's a different installation altogether, and maybe one for a good video in the future: thin clients versus thick clients. So cloud desktops is another way. Again, What does that look like? Well, you usually have a gateway. It would be in one of the big three, either Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. It would maybe provide things like scale, it would provide performance, security, data, applications, it would be pay-as-you-go, maybe cloud drives. It's a much more modern way of doing things, but hasn't probably been as successful as deploying out to lots of companies compared to the older style of model. It's something that I think businesses are looking at, and I think have been looking at for 3-4 years now, as the cloud desktops evolved. There's lots of businesses that are now there, but are still challenged with this type of scale. So what's another way to do it? Corporate laptops and a corporate VPN. So again, a gateway to the network. Doesn't really come into a data center, tends to come into an external point, maybe managed and run by a large third-party provider like BT or somebody like that, and really just corporate laptops. That can be through Microsoft, VPNs. It could be through third-party VPNs. It could be through the service provider VPNs. Tends to be a hardware proximity type product. Sometimes challenging. The old style of corporate laptop and corporate VPN, things like travelling, I've found that hard. Sometimes you're on the train and the internet proxies don't work and things like that. So sometimes you can have some challenges depending how locked down your laptops are. But that tends to be for a corporate environment where they want you to use a physical device that's only connected to the network. So that can be sometimes that you have back-end systems that monitor the devices in lockdown ports and things like that. But very much a kind of older style, longer, bigger enterprise platform. And then obviously you've got, on top of the sort of cloud modern way of looking at desktops, you've got bring your own device, and something like a web virtual VPN. So what's that? So really that's maybe using, you could maybe be using Gmail, so you may be using services, you may be using cloud planning tools. I'll come into them in a bit. And realistically what you're looking at there is using a third-party service, so something like Okta. I know a lot of government, central government environments are using Okta and other third parties to provide two-factor authentication and provisioning of users to their services. So that's one of the things that you maybe look at doing, but that's kind of tend to be in line with bring your own device, cloud SaaS platforms like Confluence or Gmail or whatever as the actual resources that you're planning to use, so that the applications and the data live in the cloud. So it tends to be bring your own device, you're not having anything stored locally, everything exists in the cloud. So you're not standing up a cloud desktop there. What you're really doing is offering cloud services to let your workers work remotely. So cloud desktops and cloud productivity services, I thought I would cover. Kind of talked about them there. I won't go into VPNs. It's probably too large and too complicated an area, and I think probably it's pretty boring. So what do you have? So cloud desktops. So you've got Amazon Web Services. They offer a product called Amazon Workspaces. Works across lots of different platforms: Android, iOS, PC, Mac, all the stuff. Also have a web client. So the similar platform exists for Microsoft Windows or Microsoft Azure platform. So they've got Windows Virtual Desktop. Again, available on all the different types of desktops. Usually you download a client or you can have it as a web integrated client. Citrix and so on did that years ago. Web desktops where you provision actual applications rather than provision a full desktop. That is something that's been around for quite a long time. Again, the difference here is that it becomes more of a platform as a service. Both of these, are more aimed at price comparisons, things like using their calculators to work out how much it's going to cost. Whereas you're not standing up a whole load of infrastructure yourself to actually then have systems engineers slice it up and build the components. A lot of that is all done in a standard platform as a service model. You don't need to worry so much about the operating system. It's really about providing the apps and data. And you get the option to have a very much a pay-as-you-go, connecting cloud drives, federated security, so you'll probably need some sort of Active Directory service. Could be anything, could be Microsoft Windows Active Directory, or it could be another LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol product. It doesn't have to be, but it does tend to find in the enterprise that Microsoft Active Directory is the primary one. If you're a big development house, you probably don't use that. You're probably more developers, so cloud desktops are good for that. They can slice up resources better. You can look at having more stringent access for a large community, and more lenient access to modify the actual image on the more powerful device clients. Without going too much into detail, essentially it's quite good for splitting that, having your cloud desktops, scale, performance, security, data, applications, and sort of pay-as-you-go models, and connecting your cloud drives. So lots of good stuff there. Well, Google don't actually offer something out direct to clients as far as I'm aware. Google themselves actually had a product called Ganeti. They used that for virtual machines. That's how all the Google developers work. I think now it's on GCP from what I read on the internet before, and basically I think it now sits on Google Compute Engine, so that's basically a way to spin up scalable servers in an IaaS or PaaS solution, and then offer that out with some APIs that eventually have some knowledge and certification of who the person is. So it's a bit like the cloud desktops from Microsoft and Amazon, identification of who people are, what they know about them, and then what resources that they can access. But not really available, as far as I'm aware, not available as a Google Cloud Desktop. Cloud productivity services. So, this is really where it kind of gets to sort of like a couple of different models. Our old models are everything that's licensed. You maybe have a licensing team in your company. You maybe have software asset management. That's what they're kind of formally known as. You maybe have some large, depending on your number of seats, you may have some large enterprise products. You also have open source, and then you have a subscription model. So open source tends to be free to some respects. Tends to be a support paid model, and an open source non-support model that's free. And then you have subscriptions, which is monthly subscription per seat numbers. So what's kind of out there in the marketplace? So you've got Google G Suite, so you get Sheets, Docs, Calendar, Gmail, all very enterprise appropriate. Probably backed with something like an LDAP, Active Directory backend service. Microsoft Office 365, you've got Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, the usual players in the space. You've also got Apple, who have iWork, so that's Pages, Numbers, and Keynote. It's a slightly smaller set of tools, but again available as a cloud set of resources, or a local installed products. And you've got planning tools such as Atlassian, Confluence, and Jira. So obviously for an agile Kanban or Scrum style deployments. So obviously those two tools are a little bit different to the previous set of tools. They are more aimed around the agile deployment, not so much the waterfall, and also aimed at being subscription based, where you maybe want to have searchable tools. I like them a bit better than things like the original original plan of suite of products. I use Gmail, and I use Outlook, and I use Excel, and I use Keynote, and I use Atlassian, so I kind of use a bit of a mix of things depending on what I like and what I find works well for me, and also depending on what device I'm using, iPad or Mac or a PC or whatever. So that's some tips and views on architecture from remote working, what people use, what do you need, what's out there in the marketplace from cloud desktops, what's out there in the productivity services, so the resources, so apps and data covered there. I guess, didn't really go into data too much. Mostly applications use data, relational databases or JSON databases or master data management CRMs. They tend to be interfaced from the applications, so I wouldn't worry too much about actually having that as a thing that you need to consider too much. But essentially, you do need to consider security as a first and foremost. User security and resource security before you offer anything to the internet. So if I could give that bit of advice, that's where I would start. Next off that would be bandwidth, number of users, scalability, availability, performance, the usual non-functional requirements type things that we would look at. So I hope that's been interesting. Remote working as a topic. I hope you're all enjoying remote working, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future with remote working as people get out of lockdown and businesses start to go back to normal. I think it'll be interesting. I think more people have probably found it more productive than they expected. So I hope you're all well, and this is Paul saying goodbye. Thanks.